So again, the biggest thing that you need to think about during this whole summer content planning ideas is your listener. What are those pain points that they're walking through this summer? Do you think that they're going to be more stressed or less stressed? Do they want something light, or do they have time to really dig in to something? What do you think that they're hoping for this summer? And how can you meet them exactly where they're at? If you are a female Christian entrepreneur or life coach, you need a podcast. And if you have a podcast, you need a podcast coach. Finding a supportive and empowering community is key to podcaster success. Through my holistic approach as a trained life coach and my experience in the podcast industry since 2016, I want to encourage you weekly through answering your podcasting questions. I'm cheering for you, and your voice matters. Hello, my fine fellow podcaster. Hi, friend. Thanks for tuning in. All right, we're talking about your summer podcast plan. We're going to talk about how to plan and create content for your podcast during these summer months, because we all know that schedule is going to look a little bit different than typical other months of the year. And maybe your audience may or may not be more or less engaged. And we're also going to talk about, actually, you know what? Let me back up here. Why is this important that we're talking about our podcast content plan? Because you want to stay on track with your long-term goals. We want to continue to bring our listener value. We want to keep piquing their interest. And my friend, as your podcast coach, sitting across from you, whispering in your ear, actually, I'm not whispering, I'm talking in your ear. And I want to avoid and prevent podcast burnout or a podcast hiatus that was not intended. So today we're going to cover what are some of those podcast challenges that we face during summer. We're going to brainstorm podcasting ideas, themed ideas, and we're going to begin to start planning ahead and staying organized for the summer. But first, before we go there, I got to give a shout out. I want to say thank you to Holistic Podcasting's Facebook group. Thank you so much for putting in your podcast reviews over these last couple weeks. I did a giveaway for anybody who left a review in the Apple Podcasts. And the reason being is because, you know that old saying, the cobbler's children have no shoes? It's kind of like that. This podcaster has no reviews because I'm always trying to help other people and review their shows, help them to get better. And so I am taking a step back and I am asking for your reviews. I would love to get your 5-star reviews. I'd love to get your 4-star reviews. If you got like a 3 or a 2 or a 1, maybe just don't listen to my show, or you can write me a personal email. But I would love and appreciate the time. It literally takes a minute to write out something or to even just hit those 5 stars. So that would be awesome. So a shout out to Margot, who left me such a kind review. She said, a true podcasting coach. Kristin is a true podcasting coach, packing these episodes full of heart wisdom and unending practical knowledge and tools. It's a must listen for any podcaster and podcaster wannabe. So thank you, Margot. It was fun to do a little giveaway for this, and stay tuned for more because I will do another giveaway coming up here in the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned. All right. So what's our plan? What's our podcasting plan? Well, first, I want you to revisit your goals for your podcast. If you're a podcaster who went through my podcasting boot camps, or you are a podcaster that we have worked one-on-one, you're a management client of mine, then you have a podcast plan. I am adamant about my clients having a plan and having goals set for their podcast, and it's very individualized. If you are someone who doesn't have a goal for your podcast, Let's schedule a podcast consultation. Let's work through some of your goals. So think about your goals. What have you already planned for with your podcast for this summer? Because if we work together, we have already started this path, right? So do you need to pivot? Are you noticing something with your listeners? They're more inclined to listen during a certain topic. This is where you get to nerd out on your numbers. Start to pay attention. Where are your listeners really giving you positive feedback, whether that's listens, sending you text messages, encouraging messages, sharing it on social media, and really start to listen. And this can happen whether you are 10 episodes in or you're 150 episodes in, you can gather data and you can start to pivot and shift. And remember, through all of this, to invite Jesus into this conversation because he is your co-host. I have talked a lot about Jesus being your CEO. He is your CEO. He is your co-host. And he has given you a message to share. He's given you a voice to carry his wisdom, his joy, his testimony, his peace to this world. And my dog Banner wanted to say hello, apparently. So God is going to give you the grace to fulfill what is needed this summer. So continue to stay focused on the prize. He's given you a goal. Yes, sometimes that goal will shift, but I just want to encourage you as the summer months and the summer rhythms begin, know that he has given you the grace to move forward. Now, we have to understand really as we enter into this conversation, what are some of those summer podcast challenges? I know some of you, this is your first summer with a podcast. So what could be those challenges that you're starting to recognize? Now, one is your schedule shifts, like I said. And so what I'm going to always encourage you to do is to remember who you're talking to. Is your audience mostly moms? Is it working moms? Maybe there's teachers. Maybe they have more time to listen during the summer. Maybe as a mom, there's more or less time available to listen because there's kids around. Maybe they are business women and they have kids at home and they don't have enough time to listen to podcasts in the season. Maybe there is women out there that are hungry for some sort of education in health and wellness because it's summertime and they are ready to care for their bodies. Like all of these, as you can see, there's varying amounts of listenership that's going to happen dependent on who your audience is. You may have an increase in your listenership and you may have a decrease, and that is okay. Now, once you've thought about your listener, you have to also think about your own schedule. What is your schedule going to be? Are you going to be wanting to have specific work time? Are you going to take a month off? All of those questions need to be asked. And so really sitting down and taking the time to ask Jesus, where is he pointing you? Maybe it's a season of finding more time to just let things go. And so you're going to need to batch record before summer begins. Now, I know when this comes out, this is like a week or two before your kids get out, or maybe they've already gotten out. So you're going to have to adjust wherever you feel is necessary. But I want you to just continue to ask yourself, what does your listener need and what do you need? And having your purpose and your mission for your podcast in your mind. Maybe you sit down and you feel like for the summer, I want to adjust my release schedule. I want to do twice a month, or I want to do, maybe I just want to go all the way through June, take July off, and restart in August. And that's fine. let's just remember to communicate with your audience. I will tell you that I took a nice little break with my other podcast, Holistic Hearts, last year. What I did was in the month of May, I just sat down and whipped out my content for the rest of the summer, and I was able to take off June, July, and August with knowing that I had an episode going out every week, even though I never sat behind the mic that whole summer. And it was absolutely gorgeous to my soul. So I highly recommend having seasons where you just take a break, and that's okay. But I say take a break strategically. If you can, batch it out ahead of time so that you can take a break and just let it go. And if you're in the place of you are feeling burnt out to the point of I just want to let it go, I really encourage you to have a conversation with me or somebody else to really walk you through that conversation. All right. Another thing of challenges in the summer, which actually can be pretty fun, is what are those specific seasonal content ideas that your audience needs? So I'm not going to go too deep into this because we're going to talk about this in just a second, but I've said it again. I've said it a bunch, and I want to say it again, is that you have to plan ahead. So for me, looking at the summer, I have to think about, okay, what do my podcasters need during the summer? And sit down and really figure out what are the benefits of those things. What are those things that are leading up to, like I have the launch of my next round of boot camps. I have a podcast boot camp coming that first week of August. So I know inside of my podcast episodes that I need to be feeding into that and preparing all of my podcasters to know that that is coming. So just with you, what are those things that your podcaster listener is going to need this summer? And I want you to be intentional about it. When the temptation can come with summer when we start to wing it because we're kind of in this relaxed state of being, more slow, which is great, but be intentional about it because winging it is not going to do yourself any favors or your audience. All right, so let's start diving deeper into the brainstorming of summer-related podcast ideas. I want you to think about your audience and why it's important for your podcast content to stay fresh and engaging during these summer months. You want to stay interesting, right? So it helps your audience stay connected to you during the season of a different rhythm. So I have a lot of podcasters who speak to moms, and I can't tell you how important it is for you to meet them where they are at. So one example would be if you have a social selling or network marketing podcast, your content would bring so much value to the mom who's home with littles if it applied to how do you run your business while there's a bunch of kids in your house. When do you do that? How long do you do that? What is the needle mover? How can you encourage her? Another brainstorm through this is maybe you have a podcast that you can throw in travel tips or some fun family outdoor activities, or maybe a summer book club, or a summer movie that you recommend, or TV shows. The summer movies thing, I was going to talk about how somehow I'm going to tie in Guardians of the Galaxy, the third movie that's coming out, because it is one of my all-time favorite movies, Guardians of the Galaxy. I want to hear a shout out to that because, oh my gosh, Drax is one of my all-time favorite characters, and somehow I'm going to incorporate him into my episode conversation. So stay tuned. So just with that, like you can figure out ways to incorporate summer movies and TV shows that you're watching, or examples of family time at the pool. I know with my Holistic Hearts last year, when I did take that hiatus of recording, when I batch recorded, I actually was like, you know what would be a great book of the Bible to walk through this summer is Song of Songs. And so that's what I did. I just walked through chapter by chapter and recorded meditations to help people connect with Jesus, moms and women to connect with Jesus throughout the summer that were easy to just pick up, listen to, and then go on with their day. So those are some ideas. Another idea would be like, how do you pack for a camping adventure? How do you walk through the separate? Oh, you know what? Actually, this made me think of something. I have a podcast management client who last year she did an amazing episode all about being present on your vacation. That was an excellent seasonal content idea for her clients and her listeners, because so many of her coaching clients were struggling with actually staying present with their family during the summer because they had one half of their mind in their business and one half of their heart in their vacation, and trying to marry those two and how to completely let go and how to surrender and let that be. So that's a great example right there. So again, the biggest thing that you need to think about during this whole summer content planning ideas is your listener. What are those pain points that they're walking through this summer? Do you think that they're going to be more stressed or less stressed? Do they want something light, or do they have time to really dig in to something? What do you think that they're hoping for this summer? And how can you meet them exactly where they're at? All right. Planning ahead and staying organized is going to help you so much as you enter into these summer months. It's going to help you be consistent. It's going to give you more energy to do other things. It's going to help you to be flexible and adaptable to changes of camps and VBS and pick up here and drop off there and go do this and exploring. And you want to have that rhythm. I want you to have fun this summer. If you are able to spend time with your kids or your family or take vacations, awesome. This is why we do what we do, so that we can fully and holistically enjoy our life. So, what are those practical things that we can do? I just told you the idea of brainstorming about your avatar. I told you, and I started with even just having that simple conversation with Jesus, asking, what is it? What's your plan for this summer? What do you want for my listener, and what do you want for me? And now I want to give you some just tools, simple tools to help you with this process. So what I use is a podcast content planner. I have a downloadable of this. I can put a link in the show notes. I also use Google Sheets. Google Sheets is my best friend. If you were in my boot camp, you should have access to this Google Sheet. It's a running document of the episode number, the episode title, any notes. It has a separate sheet inside of there of any episode ideas that you want to just jot down real quick so you don't forget. So creating something to keep track of the next 12 weeks, basically, right? The next 3 months. Now, as you look through that and you are starting to figure out when you need to record, I also want you to start thinking about who and what can you delegate. We've talked a lot in the last few weeks, a couple episodes back. I think it was episode 71 was the fear of capacity, and episode 72 was all about hiring for your team. Now, that doesn't have to be somebody that you're like officially hiring. Think about, do you have a teenager in the home or a teenager in the neighborhood who loves social media? I know I have a couple of teenagers in their house, and they would be thrilled to help me do YouTube shorts. One would love to do Instagram. One would love to do TikTok. So utilizing who you have around you. Or maybe that looks like delegating times for, hey, husband or wife, I need you to pick up so and so at this time because I need to set aside time to batch record. Communicate, communicate, communicate. What do you need in this season? And think about the conversation that you need to have with your spouse about expectations over the summer. Now, I want you to pull out your calendar and I want you to go ahead and schedule some times to batch record. And I keep pushing batch recording because I really think that most people will benefit batch recording because it just takes the pressure off. So go ahead and do that. If you're in your car, then do that when you get home. But once it's in your calendar, keep the date with yourself. Don't let it get washed away. This is your podcast. Like I said, this is your message that you're being called to present out into the world. And I encourage you to stay true to your word and committed to what you have to bring to the table. Now, with that, I have coached many people through this process, and there is definitely something to be said about accountability. We all need accountability. We can be the most strong-willed, type A, just determined people, but we all at some point need accountability. And my friend, I want you to stay focused on the journey and the goal ahead. The last thing I want you to do is to have summer get the best of you and we lose our consistency. And that is where we start to lose listeners and we lose the umph to get creative, the umph to really listen and pour into our episodes. And so that's where accountability comes in handy. And so for June's pod class, I don't know if you saw this or not, but I have started a monthly webinar, which we're lovingly called pod class. My goodness, my words are hard today. Thanks to Emmy Wilhelm's daughter. She was a podcast boot camper and she has lovingly called it pod class. And I love that. So thank you. Shout out to you. And so June 1st, we are going to be doing a whole hour of podcast content planning for your summer. And it is purely accountability. It is a time to group think. It's a time to come together and really just hash out what would be the best option for you and to plug in those calendar times, because I'm going to say 9 times out of 10, whoever's listening, go in your calendar and mark days to batch record. 9 times out of 10, you did not do it. And this time, this hour-long session, June 1st, we will have specific time to do just that. And you will have that accountability. And I would love to see you there. You have to register for it. I can send you the link. I will actually post a link down below for you to join it. It is $25. You guys, this is an amazing opportunity to join together as a group and do a podcast content coaching session with me and with other fellow podcasters. So I really encourage you to join that. All right, so let's recap over some of the main ideas of what we talked about today. We talked about how there are some challenges to podcasting during the summer if you do not plan ahead. We've got to brainstorm content that is specifically themed to your listener during this season. And we need to plan ahead and stay organized and get accountability. All right. Again, I encourage you to join the June 1st pod class workshop to really personalize your plan and really just take the overwhelm out and just do it, because you're going to feel so much better going into these summer months with a plan and knowing that this doesn't have to take up your summer. That's the beauty of it. You can truly relax and be present with your family. All right. I want to know from you, what are some of your summer podcasting tips and ideas? And come and find me on social media. You can find me at Kristin Fields Chadwick on Instagram or on Facebook. It's the same thing. Or you can say it inside of our free Facebook group. So thanks for listening, you guys. I am excited to continue this conversation. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. I love you guys. Have a good one. Hey, thanks for listening today. I hope that you feel encouraged and inspired to launch and grow your podcast. And speaking of that, I want to personally invite you, if you are thinking about starting a podcast or you're thinking about growing your current podcast, I have an amazing opportunity coming up in the middle of April, inviting you into our podcast bootcamp. The first one is for new podcasters who are looking to launch and create their brand new podcast. And the second is going to be for current podcasters who want to grow and monetize their podcast. Come check it out at www.kristinfieldschadwick.com, or you can find me on Instagram and send me a message and that you want to know more.